Hi, I'm Jeanna. This is Now What with Jeanna, and where I answer questions, offer tips, and say stupid shit that I'm sure I will later regret about addiction, sobriety, and recovery. And I say all kinds of stupid shit. If you have a question, please feel free to let me know. Today's event, though, I'm going to talk about recovery, relationships, and early recovery. When I started recovery, when I first got into it, I was told, don't date for at least a year. And in fact, my sponsor just made me don't date for at least a year. She was really adamant about it. And yeah, I don't follow the rules very well, so that didn't work out so well for me. I did date in the first year. Just a little bit of that story without going too far. But you can learn from my lessons. I hope. I'd rather you learn from my lessons than you learn from your own, because, yeah. So anyways, that's what today's episode is about. And I'm going to talk about some of the problems that can happen. I will talk about some of the problems that did happen with me. I don't necessarily think that it's a bad thing, that you can find good out of it. I did. I would rather have not gone through the bad to find the good. But I always say that a mistake is an opportunity to learn a lesson if you're willing to look at it that way. And I look back and I now know things about myself that I did not know before I had this relationship. And then that way it turned out good. So what happened in my early relationship? I was probably about five. I wasn't even that. When I first started making eyes at this guy, I worked with him, and I first started making eyes at this guy, and that was it. I wasn't wanting a relationship. I just, it was New Year's Eve, and I wanted to go out, and I knew I couldn't drink, and I was okay with going out to a drinking place. So I was making eyes at this guy at work, and I was attracted to him, and I asked him out on New Year's Eve, and it was just going to be to play pool, but I didn't want to go out. I didn't want to have fun. I did not want to drink. It was New Year's Eve. I wanted to do something different, but I still wanted to be sober. I wasn't at all interested in that, and I wasn't interested in dating. I just wasn't. And I thought, okay, that's good. I'm pretty solid. I don't want to date this guy. I just, he's just cute, and I think we'll have a good time together. It didn't take long for that to be more than a dated situation, more than a date, let's put it that way. Before I knew it, I wasn't hooked. Emotionally, I was not hooked. I was pretty shut off, but I was in a place where he could say things that impressed me enough to think that this might be the one. So let me give you an example. I was also very confused. So I'll give you an example. It was, this was 5 months in, and Valentine's Day, I spent 30 minutes looking for a card for him for Valentine's Day. And the reason it took so long was not that I was looking for the perfect love note. I was looking for the one that didn't say, I love you, be mine forever, I'm so glad that we married, any of the stuff that implied I was in a full-on long-term relationship with this guy. And I got the card, and I just signed my name in it, no special notes. It was pretty standard. I was looking for the third grade, envelope that you hand out to all the kids in the class that simply said, be my Valentine, you're sweet, whatever. And anyways, he opened the card, he read it, and he gave me these puppy eyes, and he goes, oh, I love you too. I was just waiting for the right time to say it. I didn't want to be first. And I'm looking at him, and I'm thinking, that card didn't say I love you. I know it didn't say I love you. It couldn't have said I love you. I spent 30 minutes. Did it say I love you? I wasn't sure what I had done, even though I had spent all that time trying to make sure it didn't say I love you or anything that meant I was going to be with him permanently. And I was so confused, even though I was sober, even though I was certain, I was confused about this, that the second he went into the other room, I ran over, grabbed the card, and read it. And I go, nope, it doesn't say I love you. I'm pretty certain I can read this. It doesn't even imply it in the tiniest way. A lot of things like that happened. And because I was foggy in recovery, because I was uncertain of my own feelings and my own emotions, it was so easy for him to say things that would confuse me, that would impress me enough to want me to keep going, to, and I later discovered, and I don't throw this term out lightly, I really don't, I think it's an overused term, but I later realized that there was a lot of narcissism going on, that I was being manipulated. I mean, that was one. Another case where he manipulated me was I have had thought, and I might still do it, and I don't know, I'm not so concerned about it now, that I might change my last name to James, and I never want to take on another man's last name, but he said, if we ever get married, I'll take on your son's last name. And I thought that made a big deal. That was a big deal to me. That was something that I sucked up really big time. I ate it up. Oh my God, this guy really is, he's right. All the time, by the way, thinking, I don't love him. I don't, but maybe I can learn to. I just wasn't in a clear head to make those kind of decisions. In the end, it took me about 5 months. I moved in with him. I was paying his rent, not all of his rent. I was paying part of his rent. He had filed for bankruptcy, so I know he was struggling with money. He had a car that was way out of his means, and I was helping him out. So financially, it cost me a lot. Did it cost my recovery? No, I was pretty solid in there. But there was also some other things going on that put me into fixing mode. And I really quickly got to a point where I was no longer working on my own recovery at the level that I should be, at the level that I could have been working on. I was more focused on him, obsessing over how to fix him, obsessing over, at one point, how to get out of this relationship. How do I tell him I'm done? And I didn't need all that distraction. I just needed to attend meetings on a regular basis, find out who I was, and continue to heal so that I didn't relapse. So that is my relationship horror story. I will add that right after I was out of that relationship, I was very shut down, didn't trust anyone. I did get into a relationship after that, but I mean, it was so closed that it was not a relationship. And yeah, it wasn't. So I wanted to talk about some of the other things. You've heard my problems. I want to talk about some of the other things that make waiting right for a relationship. And the first one is that you need time to find yourself. I spent so much time drinking, so much time setting aside my own values so I could drink, not doing things that I believed were right for me, dating people that I knew were wrong, but because they drank, they would support my drinking. I spent so much time in that state that by the time I finished drinking, I had no idea who I was. And you need to take the time to figure that out. And the problem with getting in a relationship with someone else is, especially if you're codependent, you start taking on their needs, their desires. It's easy to say, like this guy did, I'll take on your son's last name. And I knew that was BS. I knew that was BS. But I wasn't in touch with myself enough to be able to read that and be able to feel that. So I kind of let it happen. I very much let that happen. So you need time to find yourself. I had no idea who I really was. I saw all the negative aspects of me. I saw, that I just wasted 10 years of my life being stupid. This is negative self-talk, and I did a lot of it. I ruined relationships with my children. I had lost one of my children. I had damaged relationships. So I was telling myself all these really negative things about myself and not able to see the positive in me. And if I can't see the positive in me, then do I really know who I am? I also needed to find a purpose or a goal in my life at this time, and I was kind of floating around in that other relationship, being who they wanted me to be, doing things that they supported and they wanted from me. So yeah, I couldn't do any of these things, figure out who I was while I was trying to be who that person needed me to be. And I mentioned this before. The second thing I want to talk about is that it perpetuates codependent behaviors. When you're in another relationship and you're not fully healed, you start doing things that are codependent. Um, Here's an example. I got in trouble for going to, was it Kentucky Fried Chicken? It was either Kentucky Fried Chicken or Popeye's Chicken. I got in trouble. He got mad at me. He accused me of cheating on him because I went to Kentucky Fried Chicken. And I'm like, what? I just wanted chicken. I mean, it's just chicken. I didn't want a lover. I didn't want a date. I was craving chicken. And then after that happened, I didn't want to go to Kentucky Fried Chicken because I was afraid that I would get accused of cheating again. And I wasn't confident enough with myself that I could make that decision. I chose not to. I wasn't confident in, I just wasn't, I didn't have it there. I didn't want to disappoint him. I didn't want him to think I was cheating. So I stopped eating KFC. I'm just so stupid. Because, oh my God, yeah. I don't know what his logic was. I actually think, like I said, it was a narcissistic relationship. And if I remember right, what I think happened is he had done something wrong and he deflected that behavior onto my desire to like fried foods. I don't know. The other thing, though, with codependent behaviors is we try to please them. And when we fail at pleasing them, our own emotions become warped and a reflection of their feelings. So that if he's angry with me, even though I'm perfectly happy at my chicken eating habits, even though he's angry with me, I now beat myself up because why did I need that chicken? And that's not right. That's not who we are. But our codependent behaviors, we want to please this other person. We are people pleasers. We want to please this other person. And so we take on the emotions that we think we're supposed to take on, or we they are able to influence our emotions so much that we don't have the ability to do it on our own. I'm still a people pleaser with Vince. There are times when he wants me to do stuff and I'm just like, you can do it yourself, and I still will do it. But I now have the ability to say no. If I know it's crossing a line, if I know it's just one more thing that I can't put on my plate, I am able to say no. And I wasn't able to do that early in recovery. I didn't even know where that boundary was. Now I know where the boundary is, and if he crosses it, it is on me. Before, if I didn't know where the boundary was, I couldn't even identify to him where he's crossing it. And now with Vince, I will tell him, that's just one of my boundaries, and you're going to expect, you can expect my displeasure when you cross it. Whereas before, I didn't let that show. So when they're mad at us, we become disappointed in ourselves. When we work really hard to make them happy so we can be happy, that's codependent behaviors. And we're not in a place where we even know where that needs to stop, and where it begins and where it ends. And the burden of trying to please someone else, it becomes very heavy, and it can lead to stress, and it can lead to failure, and it can lead to relapse, easily lead to relapse. For me, it became just easier and better not to put myself in a position where I had to deal with that, especially until I figured out where my boundaries were, what my codependent behaviors were. We need to get in touch with our own feelings. That's number 3. I don't have these numbers, so I might just slip around and forget my numbers, but we need to get in touch with our own feelings. When I was heavy drinking, I only knew one feeling. I knew anger. I was so mad at the world. I just knew anger. Now, if you don't know this, anger is the easiest feeling to feel. It is the most powerful feeling. Emotions equal energy plus motion. Energy and action to move. Anger is a strong emotion that encourages a lot of energy. It gives you a lot of energy to take action, and that was the safe feeling for a lot of us. It is the safe feeling. Below anger was fear. which is, who wants to admit they're afraid? I wouldn't. In fact, I remember like third or fourth meeting in, I was bit the other day. Third or fourth meeting in, I said, I'm not afraid of anything. I now know that I'm afraid of a lot of things. I'm afraid of being alone. I'm afraid of my other child dying. I'm afraid of what's going to happen, of the unknown, of not knowing whether or not I will, I'm afraid of that. But I was afraid of a lot of things when I got sober, but it requires more vulnerability to be able to admit that and to be able to feel that. So we hide that fear. We had that fear under anger, and all I felt was anger. Below that is shame, and there was a tremendous amount of shame, and guess what? I drank my shame away. And below that is grief, and that is a hard feeling to feel. It's probably, as far as I know, it is one of the worst and hardest, most difficult, most vulnerable feelings to feel. So what I'm getting to is if we're drinking to numb our feelings, we don't know what our feelings are. Think about it. If you identify anger, if you do something, someone does something to you and it makes you angry, do you stop to think about what hides below that? Do you stop to think about how maybe you're not angry at that person? Maybe you're afraid that that person's going to take something from you, or that in a relationship that you're going to lose that person. And if you don't know what your feelings are, if you can't identify them, then it's really hard to even, what is the word I'm looking for? It's really hard to even negotiate. That's not the word I'm looking for, but to have a connection, to have communication where you guys aren't fighting with each other. I mean, if all you're feeling is anger, yeah, you're going to fight back. But if you're feeling fear, it's easier to say, you know what, I'm not really angry at you. I'm afraid of whatever it is you're afraid of. I'm not really, or here's a good one. I'm not angry at you. I'm ashamed of myself for letting that happen. That's a big difference there. And early in recovery, we don't know that. I don't know about you guys, but I spent 10 years trying to cover up those feelings so that, yeah, like I said, when I got into recovery, I only knew one. I knew anger, and I expressed it quite openly. When we get into relationships in early recovery, we are increasing our risk of relapse. Relationships add a layer of emotions that we don't understand. One of them is a state of bliss. A state of bliss. When you get in a relationship, that first, oh my God, he's so wonderful and he likes me, and oh, he's so great, and I get to see him tonight, and so there's that state of bliss. But then when the relationship, and that happiness, so they say this in recovery, when you get content, you're more likely to drink. And that state of bliss is a state of contentment. You're happy, you get confident, you go, okay, I can do this, I can stay sober, I'm not going to drink. Or I can have one drink because I feel really good about my day today. It's okay to have a drink. I'll be fine. I'm confident, I'm strong, I'll be fine. And then next thing you know, 1 turns into 10. So it decreases your resolve to stay sober. If the relationship is rocky, the dis-ease, not disease, the dis-ease could tempt you to drink, especially if there's a breakup in the situation, and you get to a point where you really don't care what's happening in the world because there's, he doesn't love me anymore. So there's a problem with that. If the other person is an active drinker, if they're an active drinker, you might feel this urge or this need or desire to drink with them, so you maintain this connection. Drinking becomes a connection, and they may just have one, but that doesn't mean that you're able to just have one. So there's that happens. I do remember after a while going on a date. I was dating someone who didn't normally drink, and he ordered a drink at dinner. And that was difficult for me. I don't know. I got tense and tight. I didn't want to drink. It wasn't that, but I found myself staring at his drink, And I found myself obsessing over the fact that he was drinking, and it just kind of blew it, you know. So you need to be in a solid place so that doesn't happen. Otherwise, there's a very good chance that in your discomfort, you will take that chance. So we're getting closer here. I'm looking at the time, and yes, I had some difficulties when we started, but I think this is going okay. If you have a question, please feel free to ask it, or comments. It might actually bring something up for me. The next thing I wanted to talk about, the next reason it might not be good to have a relationship in early recovery, is that there's a such thing as called transfer addiction. Addiction is a problem of both inside chemicals, outside chemicals. Outside chemicals, the drugs that we use, the alcohol, the marijuana. These are all chemicals that change us on the outside. But then there's also the inside chemicals, and these chemicals change our dopamine levels, our serotonin levels. There was one. MDMA. I think I don't know. That's not something I'd ever done, but I was doing the research here, and it produces a chemical that love also produces. No, it's not oxycodone. That's a whole different thing. I don't know. I wrote it down to my other sheet, but I forgot. But anyways, it produces a chemical that love also produces. So if that is a chemical that you're used to, and suddenly you're using love to replace that chemical, and love produces that chemical, and you're addicted to that chemical, why wouldn't you become addicted to love? I mean, it makes sense. But love also produces other chemicals that are addictive, that our brain uses to create habits, even when they're unhealthy. So one of those chemicals, and studies do show this, that the psychological differences between substance use and addiction, and non-substance use addictions, so alcohol versus love versus sex versus gambling versus eating, that those differences between those addictions are actually very few. That in our brains, when we are addicted to alcohol, we have changes in our dopamine levels that help us um, be happy, and we want more of that, and so we drink more. When we fall in love, studies show that there are changes in our dopamine levels that make us want more of that person that we are falling in love with. So when we are around that person, we get an increase of dopamine. Dopamine is the chemical that the brain uses to say, hey, this is a reward, do this again, do this again, do this again. And so there's an easy way to get addicted to love. In fact, I have a book. I don't have it right here, but it's called Love Addiction. I have it. I move things around, so I don't even know where it is right at the moment. But I have a book called Love Addiction, and I didn't read it for this. Maybe I'll do that in a future episode. But also, we know sex addiction, of which I know several people who struggle with that, and it's the same thing. They are replacing getting some sort of reward, replacing something in their childhood. Generally, it's a shame, which is what we use addiction to replace. We hide over the shame, cover over the shame, and they're using sex, because sex increases those chemicals that we want. So anyways, it's easy with that happening within the brain for that to turn into an addiction. And I see it all the time. I'm not going to name names, but I know that there is one person. God, there's a lot of people. Really, there's a lot of people. You probably know several yourself. It's just there's a relationship, and then a relationship, and then a relationship, and then a relationship, and barely a week goes by when they break out of one relationship and they're already in another relationship. And it's because they're getting that dopamine that makes them happy. It's because they don't want to be alone, because in their aloneness they have to feel their feelings. Relationships distract from recovery. So if I am in recovery and I know it's a Friday night and I probably need to go on a date, but someone wants to go to a meeting, but someone wants me to go on a date, I have this temptation that really doesn't need to be there, because what I really need to do is go to a meeting. when my situation with the other guy and I was trying to figure out why is this guy so weird, I spent an awful lot of time researching what his problem might be, and I wasn't focusing in on what my problem might be. Okay, so it very seriously distracted from my recovery. I was having to defend stupid things like why I like chicken, and and I was getting angry at that instead of identifying why I was having a problem with being angry at the fact that this guy, it just distracts from the whole thing. And I do know this too. I had a sponsor at the time, and I really needed to see her. I really needed to work on and I didn't want to. Honestly, I didn't want to face it because she told me no relationships, and I got into a relationship. And so I was avoiding that part of my recovery because I was embarrassed at not doing what she suggested I do. So yeah, distract from that. And then I did say there was one more, and that it perpetuates unhealthy relationship cycles. So when I was drinking, I had a few dates with people who didn't drink, and I didn't give them past the first date because it didn't support my drinking behaviors. Rather, I was very happy when the person I drank with drank as much as me, which was very unhealthy for me. It kept me in that state. When I stopped drinking, I was still attracted to those people. I still wanted someone who would party, someone who would have a good time with me. I still wanted people that were impulsive. I still wanted people that were unhealthy. Um, I like the idea of control, of not being controlled. I've never liked the idea of being controlled. But what I did like was the idea of a man who could take control. Does that make sense? And unfortunately, if they felt the need to take control in an early relationship, it's just simple things like opening doors and suggesting things, and it seems very innocuous at first. But as a relationship goes on and they let down their guard, it can become things like narcissistic behavior. It can become things like verbal abuse and physical abuse. And while I was drinking, I had relationships of all sorts that did this. I did not respect myself enough to demand their respect. And early in recovery, I was still attracted to that kind of behavior. I became attached to toxic people because that's what I was used to. And that is what I knew growing up. That is what I knew. I was around people who were in toxic relationships, who were codependent on each other, who controlled and manipulated each other. And if I didn't take time to become healthy in my own relationship, I was just going to keep attracting that. Like attracts like. And like attracts like. What you are, the emotional maturity state you are at the point where you're attracted to someone else is generally going to be around the same emotional maturity they're at. So if you got two 40-year-old, 12-year-olds, does that make sense? 40-year-old people who are acting like 12-year-olds, then that's what you got. That they're going to attract each other. If I am a 40-year-old acting, and I'm, by the way, not, I'm much older than that, but if I'm a 40-year-old acting like a 40-year-old, then that 40-year-old who acts like a 10-year-old is not going to attract me. I'm not going to be attracted to him. I'm not going to be attractive to him. I'm not going to, that's not what I want. That's not what I'm going to get. However, if I'm a 40-year-old acting like a 40-year-old and a 40-year-old who acts like a 40-year-old comes along, there's a better chance of that attraction. Now, here's the problem. If I'm a 12-year-old, if I'm a 40-year-old, oh God, these numbers. If I'm a 40-year-old who acts like a 12-year-old and I grow out of that behavior in my recovery, and suddenly I'm a 40-year-old who's acting like a 40-year-old, and the person I'm dating is still acting like a 12-year-old, how's that going to work? I'm not going to be attracted to that anymore. what I'm gonna want is something else, and I can't guarantee that they're gonna grow with me. I don't know if that makes sense. I know what I'm thinking. I got all tied up in the numbers. So instead of, what I'm saying is, instead of jumping into the for now relationship, yes, I like this 12-year-old. That sounds so gross. Instead of jumping into the for now relationship, why not be patient? Why not wait until you're fully healed so that you are jumping into the forever relationship? Or, I don't know, you're healed. Maybe you're not wanting to jump in there for a relationship. Either way, you don't want this 40-year-old, 12-year-old slowing or getting in the way of meeting the right one. And that's what happens when you date when you're not ready. So, all right. I'm almost done with that. We're running into, we've gone a little over half an hour, 40 minutes. Here's the thing. I hear all the time, and I even said it, but it's not dating. I'm not interested in dating. It's sex. Sex is different. There's no relationship there. I said it. It's just sex. It's no relationship. I'm not emotional. I'm not falling in love. I'm just having fun. And by the way, I was scared of sex when I first got into recovery. I hadn't had sex without alcohol in so long that I wasn't in a hurry. So that's not really what I was saying, but I hear it a lot. A lot of people said, but it's sex. The problem is, and I knew this about me, is that it is sometimes difficult for people to make a distinction between sex and love. When I was drinking, I would meet someone, it would be just sex, and then the next day you wake up and you go, maybe that's the one. And before I knew it, I was finding that I had this difficult distinguishing between sex and love. The act of having sex meant I would certainly feel like I was in love and certainly become attached to this person. In early recovery, that I don't think changes very much. You're still who you were, trying to fight off the cravings for alcohol, and not even realizing that you may have this love addiction or this sex addiction, not even realizing that you may have a difficulty distinguishing between that. But it also comes on with prior childhood abuses. So sex is a form of affection, and if a child was abandoned, or if a person was abandoned as a child, and they have this need for affection because their parent didn't give it to them, then the second they get the need, they get the affection, it feels like love. It feels like this is right. This is, oh yes, this person is giving me what I need. This must be love. I don't understand what this is, but I didn't get it before and I get it now. It's got to be love. So there's that difficult, it's a slippery slope. The other thing is with, if you were sexually abused as a child, I know this happens. This is what people who love each other do. Whether it's the dad saying that, the mom saying that, your, uncle, church minister, whatever, that is something that, to groom the child, that's what they do. This is what people who love each other do. They have this intimate sexual behavior. And a child, at 6 years old, I know that I was not able to distinguish the difference between love and sex, because I was told that this is what people who love each other do, and I carried that illusion, that false understanding of love and sex. I carried that into my adulthood, and it took me some healing to get past it. It took some sobriety to get past that. So this is a very delicate topic, one that I have studied quite a bit, one that I am not an expert on in the sense that I have gone to school for it, but one that I think I understand. And yeah, I'm going to move on because it is such a tough topic. So question is, should you follow the 1-year rule? And I would never say yes or no. I would say these are some of the things you need to pay attention to. and that you need to make your own decision. So part of our recovery, part of what we're doing in this year is learning who we are. We're learning how to make our own decisions, and we're learning how to live with the consequences of making our own decisions without turning to drugs and alcohol. And how do we do that if we're following everyone's rules, everyone else's rules? And I'm not saying that you should not. I mean, God, if someone says it, if enough people say it, and I'm saying it, if enough people say it, maybe you should listen. Maybe I should have listened. But the problem is, I was going to make my own decisions anyways. And what ended up happening was, because my sponsor was so adamant, I had difficulty going to her to talk about it. But part of learning how to be sober is learning how to make those decisions, how to suffer the consequences, and not how to deal with it with drugs and alcohol. It's about learning who I am and what I want. And if I can't do that, if I can't say, you know what, I do want a relationship, and then learn from my mistake, then I'm not doing that. You just have to kind of think about all this stuff and make that decision on your own. What lessons can you learn? Because I think, and I said this in the live I did earlier, that there are benefits to making these mistakes. There's benefits to this. I learned a lot about who I am based on the fact that I was stupid and did not listen to the people around me. So lessons that I can learn. I learned that I needed to focus on my own recovery. I learned that other people could not please me. I learned that if I wasn't careful, I could become so tied up and involved in other people's behaviors and their emotions and their self-worth that I could lose my own. And this relationship magnified my own tendency to fix people. Oh my God, I became obsessed, like completely obsessed with what was wrong with him, that I forgot that I was working on what was wrong with me. I forgot that that was important. I learned that in recovery by making this mistake in recovery. So you kind of need to ask yourself, can you do this without alcohol? I have a whole list of questions. Let me talk about these list of questions here. And then we're done. I think this is about it, is my list of questions. So when you're thinking about whether or not you want to get in a relationship in recovery, in early recovery or late recovery, 2 years in is not a bad wait time. It gives you just more time to be a strong you. So anyways, thank you for joining, and I am on questions. Ask yourself these questions before you decide to have a relationship in early recovery. First one: have I given myself enough time to learn to feel and understand my emotions again? Do I know the difference between anger, fear, shame, and I forgot what it was, grief? Do I know the difference between that? Do I know what it feels like to be truly happy? Do I know what it feels like to be at peace? Okay, so when I'm drinking, how about this? When I smoke pot, I can feel really at peace, but that is a very different feeling than being at peace as a sober person. It's much different feeling. And I did not know that until I had enough time in recovery to actually feel what it means to be at peace. So have you given yourself enough time to learn and to feel and understand your emotions again? Do you want someone to save you? If the answer to that question is yes, I say run. If you want someone to save you, if that's why you want in a relationship, is because this person will save you, they'll make you happy, they're going to make sure you don't make bad decisions, they're going to help you with your bills. If any of that is true, and if you're wanting to be in a relationship because this person will save you, I say run. Do not have the relationship, because this person is not going to save you. This is only going to lead to disappointment. This person may help for a while. It may feel good. They may pay a few bills, but the price that is paid in return could be very big. Do I know what I want, and have I found purpose for myself? Vince and I have really combined our purpose. He wanted recovery and to help people in recovery. I wanted recovery and to help people in recovery. And I wanted it, was already working at it before. He's 28 years sober. He's been working at it for years. And so it was good. It was good for us because we just combined our purpose to move out into the same one. I do know in previous relationships, I took on their purpose. What they wanted became what I wanted because I didn't really know what I wanted. But in reality, when I really truly found what I thought was going to be good for me, it was very different from anything that I have been in a relationship with before. So if you found your purpose and you know what you want and you're solid in that, maybe you can handle a relationship. If you have not, run. Run. Do I love myself? Do I love myself? You're not going to find self-love in other people. Vince likes to say, Vince says it, I know that about you and I love you anyways. He can love me enough to get me so far. I'll love you until you learn to love yourself, but he can't make me love myself. If you haven't learned how to love yourself, then you might not be ready for the relationship. You're not going to find it in someone else. Ask yourself the pros and cons of the relationship or getting in a relationship, or the benefits and costs. Same thing, but I think phrased a little bit different. You might get some different answers. So either or both. And then do that list, that pro con list, and then weigh it off and see what is that going to, put you at more risk based on the pros and cons of a solid list? Am I repeating a pattern? Are you dating the same kind of person? My nose tickles really bad. Are you dating the same kind of person that you've dated in the past? And if so, once you get fully sober, you're going to realize how much you have changed. And that person may not be what you want anymore once you become the person you were supposed to be. Does the relationship feel rushed? If this guy pushed me. He didn't push me. I made my own decisions. But yes, it felt rushed. It was rushed before I had a chance to really think through what I wanted to do. I was already living with him. And if the relationship is feeling rushed, you need to just step back, take a pause, and really decide if this is the best for you. If the relationship is rushed, there might be some ulterior motives behind it. In this case that I had, there was. He needed help. He needed help paying the bills. Will this person wait for me? If the person's not willing to wait for you to get through your recovery, to be healed, then this person is not worth what you have to offer. I'm just going to say it that because they're in a rush. They're in a hurry. They're also looking probably for a distraction from whatever struggles with them. If that person is willing to wait, they're more likely to be in a healthy spot and a healthy place in their lives. And that is what you want. If the person's not going to wait for you, think twice. Do I need added distraction of a relationship right now, or am I solid in my recovery? Will that added distraction lead me to relapse? Would you want to date you right now? It took me a long time to be in a place where I could answer yes to that question. I know it wasn't early in recovery. If I'm still working on healing me, if I'm still a mess, if I'm still dealing with catching up on bills and repairing relationships, my family's still not talking to me, I have to ask, would I want to date someone else that's in that spot? And if the answer is no, then work on yourself a little bit more. If someone comes along and they like you enough to start a relationship, you can almost be assured that someone else will come along when you're better. So anyways, that's about it for today. That was long and I talked a lot and my throat hurts. And if you saw me earlier, I was out at the water, and this is Lower Alabama in tropical area, semi-tropical area. I don't know if we consider this tropical, but I think it is. Humidity is great, and I'm stinky. I need to take a shower. So I'm going to call it quits. I do want to say that next week, the topic I'm going to talk about next week is, are you thinking about detox? So that, by the way, is on the agenda for next week. I may hold it off 1 week. I wish I'd have picked, I can do this. Because here's what happens. I'm working on a detox document that is out actually right now, being looked at by a couple professionals, doctors. Some people have been through detox. I have not actually. I've been through detox to get off the alcohol, but I've not actually. It was, for me, it was like a very bad hangover, but it wasn't as bad as it could be. And there's some dangers with detox that I want to make sure I get right. So it's being looked at by some professionals. Hopefully it'll be done by next week. If it is done by next week, I'll probably go do we'll probably talk about that and the detox, dangers of detox and that kind of stuff. Oh, if you are watching this on YouTube, please hit the subscribe button. I'm still working on getting 100 people in there. Actually, you're not watching this on YouTube because my restream isn't working out. So I will put this live on YouTube later. In the meantime, I guess that's going to be it. I will see you next week. I'm trying to think if there's anything else I wanted to say. Oh, I did. There is something. I wasn't here last week, and I did say when I came on live earlier that I would talk about it. Real quick, because it was very exciting for me. I had to make a decision, do my live or go to an interview, and I went to the interview. And the interview was an opportunity to work with people in recovery with the, and I don't want to say too much. I don't know. I feel like I feel like there's a confidentiality I'm breaking, but I don't think there is. I just feel like it. But it's with the aftercare program, and I'm excited about it. So I'll be able to work with some women in recovery, and I'm just so looking forward to it. And that's where I was last week. And I did, by the way, start tomorrow. And so, yes, I will be doing that. And I guess that's it. Thank you, and I will see you next week. In the meantime, be happy, love yourself. Remember you're enough and you're worthy, just the way you are. All right. Talk to you later. Bye.